Hey y'all, hey, what's up, what's up, what's up? All right, so we're gonna do a miracle um episode. This will be the first where I'm gonna do a Survivor series, miracle series, and this will be episode 1, as you guys have read in the title. And I am going to a dermatologist soon. I talked about this before. It's not engraved in stone, but there's a possibility that I have tuberous sclerosis, and there's so many things pointing to that. I hopefully will see when I go to the dermatologist. I do have new tumors growing in my ears because the other ones were removed. More are growing. I have another tumor. Don't mind my hands. I look like I've been working on cars. That's the tomboy in me. I can't help it. That's a tumor. It looks like a tumor trying to grow right there. And if you notice, my nose is red. All over here is red. And it looks like one is trying to form on my nose. And it's quite sore and very red. And I don't know what the hell's going on. It could be another one. So, nightmare from hell. It would be nice to have a diagnosis so I know what the hell's going on, and hopefully there will be medication that I can take. Not that I want more medication, because I damn sure don't, but I want to put the brakes on the crap that my body's trying to do. Enough is enough already. All right, so let's do our first survivor story. And this is going to be, his name is David. And he and his friend Josh and the captain, who's Jerry, they went out on the boat to go diving. And David had no business. Let's just keep it real. All right. A lot of times we do things we ain't got no business doing. And he had no business diving that day because he was very, very sick. But the desire to do something a lot of times is bigger than your common sense. And you end up doing something really dumb. And so, but that was the least of his problems. To be quite honest, that was the least of his problems. Okay. So, he went down and he admitted, okay, that his equipment didn't really fit correctly. Like his hood didn't fit right, and his respirator, I think there was something with his respirator didn't fit right either. And the hood, because it didn't fit properly, was kind of tugging on his chin. And it eventually knocked his oxygen mask off, his respirator off. And Josh, his friend Josh, was trying to put a respirator in his mouth, and he was fighting him because he was panicked, and sometimes people will fight you even if you're trying to save them. So his friend backed off, and David dropped his weight belt, which are weights that keep you, deeper in the water. He dropped his weight belts, and you have to remember he's 90 feet down. 90 feet down, okay? Dropped his weights and went shooting all the way to the top rapidly. That is potentially life-threatening. I think he just panicked because he couldn't breathe. Because what happens is you're breathing in oxygen from your oxygen tank. I'm not an expert on this. I'm going to explain it to the best of my ability, but I'm not an expert on this. It's just this weird thing. Anyway, because of the oxygen, him going up too fast caused nitrogen to be introduced to the oxygen. Instead of oxygen, it's more nitrogen. And that is potentially life-threatening. And then what happens is you get what's called the bends. You're breathing in, and you're breathing in nitrogen, and it gets inside your blood, and it travels to the different organs in your body. And then the bubbles which is what nitrogen is the bubbles are in your body and they expand to where they burst and they do damage to whatever organs, your internal organs that are being affected, usually your lungs. So let me see if I could pick up from there. Okay, nitrogen bubbles entered his body, grew larger, especially towards his lungs. Jerry saw frothy blood come out of David's mouth and knew that he had decompression sickness. What happened to my... Okay. Frothy meaning oxygen filled blood, like it's foamy-ish. And he knew when the bubbles go in and they explode. So obviously, he's going to have a snowball effect from that. It's doing damage to his lungs. It's bursting tissue in his, capillaries, tissues, whatever, in his lungs and causing him to bleed. And then he can't breathe correctly. And it's just a continual snowball effect. His lungs filled with blood and he died. He saw his body from above. Let me pause right there. So Jerry, thank God for Jerry. Jerry knew to lay him on his side and to elevate his feet to use oxygen, or not oxygen, excuse me, erase that. Raise his feet, elevate his feet so that the nitrogen, the gravity can pull the nitrogen down instead of letting it keep rising and then affect his brain, because if he gets those bubbles in his brain, he's done. There's nothing else that could be done at that point. So the helicopter came out. So Jerry basically called the Coast Guard and told them what was going on, and we're having a Mayday. And I don't know what was up with her that she wasn't comprehending that what he's saying, or what, I don't know what was going on with her. But he said, we have a Mayday. We've got to get emergency help for this person. And she said, well, let me analyze the situation. And he said, lady, if you don't get someone out here out here now, it'll be your ass on the line, not mine. Well, she got a wake-up call and she immediately dispatched a helicopter. Thank you. Use your brain, lady. He called Mayday, just because. Girl, pull it together. So he died. And he saw his body from above. He saw them working on his body from above. Okay? The rescue helicopter came to the scene. Energy and light told him it's not your time. So a lot of the survivor stories that I've seen, the light, if they go to heaven, the light and the energy communicates with them through their mind. There's no words, but you know what's being said to you, which is incredible. Okay? The energy and light told him it's not your time. He ended up in the decompression chamber at the hospital, but wow, he had nitrogen bubbles lodged in his spine that paralyzed him. He was given pressurized oxygen to dissolve the nitrogen bubbles in his blood. So the analysis that I read about, trying to get a better understanding about this, is if you shake up a can of soda and you take the lid, you open it, everything, the soda rushes out. Well, that's how the nitrogen is inside your body. The bubbles get huge and then they just cause damage to whichever organs. So he felt a pull towards his body and he was angry that he had to come back. And so, some people that had, because I've watched a lot of these because I was like hooked. I ain't gonna lie, I was hooked. Some people, experienced heaven and they decided, I don't want to be brought back. I was good where I was. Sometimes they get mad at the people that bring them back, the medical personnel who bring them back. And some of them have a downward spiral when they come back because they didn't want to come back. Because the minute your spirit is reunited with your body, it's kind of like, like it's reunited, and then you the physical pain kicks in, and the agony and reality of everything that caused you to be in the situation that you're in, it comes rushing back. And that makes them even, crave that peace even more, because I'm back to this, I'm back at physical agony and the whole bit. He stayed in the hospital for 4 weeks. Okay. He had 10 decompression sessions with no permanent injury. No permanent injury. That is a miracle. When he came back to his body, he was angry that he wasn't allowed to stay in heaven, and he felt rejected by God. Bad. Really bad. He immersed himself in depression and alcoholism. He ended up seeking therapy, and he became much better after therapy, and he also now has a daughter, which gives him a new reason to live. He is much better now, mentally and physically. Okay, so I might have time for another one. I'm going to have to go through this carefully because I didn't get to verbally translate this to my phone, so it's a bunch of my writing, that Chinese writing, so not literally Chinese, but pretty close. All right, so here's another survivor story. Her name is Laura. She worked with disabled children. All of her children were in wheelchairs, and she loved every bit of it. She just absolutely loved doing that kind of work. The school that she was working at was for disabled children, who have special needs. So it was, you're going to have patience with me because I got to, go over my writing. She was driving. It was April Fool's Day. And as she was driving, she had severe pain down her arm. And she's thinking, as she's driving this bus, holy crap, I'm having a heart attack, and I need to get this bus with all these children on it. I have to get them, get the bus to in a safe spot. And that's what she did. And let me see, make sure. She had sharp pain in her left arm. She parks the bus outside the school gym. She called her boss and told her she couldn't finish the day. Her boss was like, why? She said, because I'm having a heart attack. And she said, that's not a good April Fool's joke. She said, I'm not joking. Call 911. Yeah. Yeah, of all days, right? So it was April Fool's Day. Laura said, it's not a joke. Call 911. Laura had blocked arteries in her heart, causing extreme pain. She died. Her coworker had, when something medical happens at this particular school, they page everybody and all the staff. I don't know where the kids were, but Michelle, I guess they stayed with the kids. I don't really know, but Michelle was trained with basic medical care, basic, like almost like a first responder kind of, and she was trained to use the AED, which is it's an I can't talk. AED. It's an external fibrillator for your heart. So she started cutting her clothes off and applying it, the AED to her, which basically jolts the heart. She died. Before she died, the coworker used the AED and Laura screamed. She died after the second shock with the AED, and she floated out of her body. So the first time she was shocked, which I'm sure feels horrible, she screamed, and then the second time she died after the second shock, and she floated out of her body. She said, you feel light and at peace. She knew she was dead, but it didn't bother her. That's another thing that I want to tell you. Remember, I watched a bunch of these because, like, you get addicted. I ain't gonna lie, you get addicted, so you know. And then your phone. Oh, excuse me. Then your phone says, well, since you like this, you might like this. The next thing you know, you're in the rabbit hole. And you're watching like 15 in a night. Okay. Anyway, um, the people that died and went to heaven, even the people that didn't go to heaven, they went to hell. They knew they were dead. And the people that went to heaven, that didn't bother them. That didn't bother them at all. Because the peace and the love that surrounded them, they saw, a lot of times they saw the people working on their body, and they're like, okay, I don't want anything to do with that. I'm good where I'm at. Which is a beautiful thing. She saw bright light, beautiful, vivid colors. And that's another thing that a lot of people have said who died and eventually were brought back. They said that you think the colors, and this is not my words, it's theirs. You think the colors here are bright? You haven't seen bright. They are the most vivid colors you have ever seen in your life. And I'm like, ooh, I like that. CPR was not working. When she died, she flatlined. She saw her ex-husband. This is another thing that people have said who have died and saw loved ones in heaven. They said they look amazing. They look younger, they look healthier, they look happier. And she said her ex-husband, who died of a heart attack, he was there to greet her. And she said he looked amazing. And she reached her hand out while she was gone. She reached her hand out to touch his, and he pulled away from her. And he said, it's not your time. And then he just disappeared. And let's see. She was shocked 6 times by the defibrillator. She was shocked 6 times, defibrillated 9 times, received 18 shocks. 3 more shocks would be done before declaring her dead. They had shocked her so many times that the doctor basically said, we're just going to do 3 more and then we're going to call it. And they did, let's see, by the second, she flatlined. Okay, so that's another thing I want to tell y'all. Remember I told you in the previous video that if you're gone for, you're dead basically for 45 minutes to an hour. If you're brought back, you have some significant brain damage. You'll be in a coma for a long time. You may not be able to function anymore. You may not know how to eat, talk, walk anymore. There will be usually some very serious deficits with your body. And I also talked about the person who was dead for almost an hour and they had no long-term effects, which is impossible. That's her, Laura, the one I'm talking about. I'm surprised I found it because I'm thinking I'm never going to be able to tell you guys that because I don't know if I'll ever find that. I found it. Flatlined for 57 minutes. 57 minutes she was flatlined. And she came back with no issues. She was dead for 57 minutes, heart shocked 21 times. She was in a coma for 3 days with no brain damage. No brain damage. What was this on the back of here? Okay. No brain damage. She was in a coma only for 3 days. So God gave her the grace, as I said before. We're going to bypass science. We're going to bypass the normal rules. We're going to bypass the medical. We're going to bypass all of that. And you're going to be perfectly fine. I just want you to have this experience. And we're going to bypass any long-term effects. And she's just fine. She was only in the hospital for 3 days with a coma. And she was eager to get the heck out of there. She did have to have a triple bypass. And she was monitored obviously for a while, and she's doing very well. Recovered from surgery just fine. And I forget how many days she was in the hospital for after surgery, but she was ready to go. I think she was in the hospital for like 8 days, I think. I can't remember. And she was ready to go home, honey. She's like, "Can I go?" I remember telling my doctor recently, it's a new year, so he wants to have all these things done and, whatever. And he goes, "You haven't had a mammogram, so I'd like you to have that." And I'm like, I said, "I talked to the girls. They said they're fine." He said they lied. They lied. So I did have a mammogram done to make him hush. And then, what else? I had to have a tetanus shot, which I wasn't looking forward to. And after I had the tetanus shot, he said, "Well, you agreed to that?" I said, "Yes." So I had that done, which if you haven't had it in 10 years, you really need to have it. And I said to the nurse, I said, "Are you the one doing the shot?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Am I going to have a hard time raising my arm afterwards? Is it going to be extremely sore?" And she said, "You may experience some soreness." Actually, I did really fine. I was only mildly sore for like, I don't know, it wasn't that long. Maybe, I don't know, for the rest of I don't know, the next day, mildly sore. So it was no big deal. It was nothing. And I said to her, "Can I escape?" She said, yeah. She started laughing. She said, "Yes, you can." Yes, you can escape. So anyway, so those are two survivor stories. I am tickled that I found the one that I told you she was without a heartbeat for a really long time. I am tickled that I found it. As I started watching it, I was thinking, this is the story I started telling them about. Oh my God, I found it. I can't believe I found it, but I did. And that was Laura, and she bounced back, and everything is good. David bounced back, and everything is well. So, hope you guys enjoyed that. And those are 2 episodes, technically. And I'll work on a third one at some point soon. And you guys take care. And I'll also keep you posted on what the doctor says about this possible condition that I may have. I talked about this before. My body likes to make tumors, and I had a gazillion of them in my uterus. So many. I asked the doctor after she did surgery, I said, "How many did I have in there?" She said, "Too many to count." Oh, oh, okay. So that was just weird. But, I'll always keep you guys posted. We're family. You know this. You know this. Hello. We're family. And for those of you who are new subscribers, speaking of family, thank you for joining, and we're happy to have you. Have a seat. Enjoy the episodes that are this episode, these 2 episodes that I did. Hello. These 2 episodes, and I'll work on more. And I love you guys. Take care. Those of you that are new, thank you for joining the family, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.